fundamentally change the work environment, and many predict that working from home will remain a trend even after the pandemic. In the end, the coronavirus has drastically changed our lives. In today's world, personal hygiene is more important than ever, especially due to the COVID-19. In today's world, personal hygiene is more important than ever, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This virus has highlighted the crucial role that hand washing plays in preventing the spread of germs. People often touch their nose or mouth without even realizing it, which can easily spread germs. However, by properly cleaning your hands, you can get rid of most germs. Hand sanitizers have become a ubiquitous part of daily life due to the pandemic, and they are available at the entrance of most buildings, as well as in offices and hand sanitizers have become a ubiquitous part. Hand sanitizers have become a ubiquitous part of daily life due to the pandemic, and they are available at the entrance of most buildings, as well as in offices and classrooms. Signs remind people to use them frequently, and many people carry portable containers of hand sanitizer or alcohol wipes. In addition to hand hygiene, wearing masks is also critical for preventing the spread of respiratory diseases. In many places, wearing a mask in public places is mandatory to help keep everyone safe. Korean movies have significantly improved compared to the past, and they have come a long way. Nowadays, many Korean movies are making it big at the box office and are also being released overseas. Additionally, some of them are winning awards at major film festivals. Some of them are winning awards at major film festivals. As a matter of fact, the Korean movie Parasite made history in 2020 by winning 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. As a matter of fact, the Korean movie Parasite made history in 2020 by winning 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. It was the first time that a Korean movie had won an Academy Award. The director of the movie, Bong Joon-ho, won the Oscar for Best Director. 2 years ago, a Korean actress named Yoon Yeol-jung won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role in the movie Minari, which generated a lot of buzz. I felt incredibly proud when Korean movies won awards like this.
I felt incredibly proud
when Korean movies won awards like this. Overall, I believe that Korean movies are very unique and expertly crafted. They deal with themes that many people can relate to, and the acting and chemistry among the actors are also exceptional. Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the past. Several major COVID-19 vaccines, including those from Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, have been approved for use. Healthcare workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. However, healthcare workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. Healthcare workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. However, logistical problems have led to some delays in the vaccination process. Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects. Additionally, Some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects, such as blood clots. These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity. 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 Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available. Nevertheless, other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not. Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. Korea's first confirmed case
of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020.
Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus. Thanks to these active measures, Korea managed to avoid a major outbreak during the pandemic, with a total number of cases a little over 30 million as of today. This is relatively low compared to case numbers. This is relatively low compared to case numbers in other countries. However, the pandemic is not over in Korea, and there are still large clusters of community infections all over the nation. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increased social distancing measures and forcing some businesses to shut down or close early. Social gatherings of 5 or more people have been banned, and mask wearing is mandatory in all public places, including
transportation.
Social gatherings of 5 or more people have been banned, and mask wearing is mandatory in all public places, including transportation. These measures have been effective in preventing the spread of the virus. However, there has been a high level of quarantine fatigue among people, especially among small business owners. Meanwhile, vaccinations have begun in Korea, but the pace has not been fast enough due to the shortage of vaccines. It has been almost 3 years since the coronavirus first broke out, and vaccinations for COVID-19 have been going on in countries around the world. However, some countries are still seeing a huge number of new patients due to the Delta variant of the coronavirus, which is more transmissible. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on our daily lives. Firstly, we have had to minimize person-to-person contact and Firstly, we have had to minimize person-to-person contact and avoid crowded places such as bars or clubs. Firstly, we have had to minimize person-to-person contact and avoid crowded places such as bars or clubs. Many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. Some made their staff work. Many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. Many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. Some made their staff work from home, and some made their staff work from home, and work meetings took place via video conferencing. Some made their staff work from home, and work meetings took place via video conferences using programs like Zoom. This has fundamentally changed the work environment, and many predict that working from home will remain. This has fundamentally changed the work environment. And many predict that working from home will remain a trend even after the pandemic. In the end, the coronavirus has drastically changed our lives. This is fundamental. Testing stations were set up Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the past. Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved. I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the past. Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the Korean movies have greatly improved. Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the past. Once again, I firmly believe that Korean movies have greatly improved compared to the past. Several major COVID-19 vaccines including those from Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, have been approved for use. Several major COVID vaccines, including those from Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, have been approved for use. Vaccines have been approved for use. Several major COVID-19 vaccines have been approved for use. Several major COVID-19 vaccines, including those from Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, have been approved for use. Healthcare workers and those at high risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. Several major COVID-19 vaccines, including those from Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, have been approved for use. Healthcare workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. Healthcare workers workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority.
Priority. Healthcare workers and those at high risk having receiving a vaccination as a priority. Healthcare workers and those at high risk having receiving vaccinations as a priority. Healthcare workers and those at high risk having receiving vaccinations as a priority. Receive vaccination. Healthcare workers having receiving vaccination as a priority. Healthcare workers and those at high risk having receiving vaccination as a priority.
Healthcare workers and those at higher risk have been receiving vaccinations as a priority. However, logistical problems have led to some delays in
logistical problems have led to some delays in the vaccination process. However, logistical problems have led to some delays. Logistical problems have led to some delays in the vaccination process.
However, logistical problems have led to some delays in the vaccination process. Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to
Some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to the concern about side effects such as blood clots.
Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots.
Some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to the concerns about side effects. Some people are hesitant
Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots.
Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots. Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots. Some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots. Some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to the concerns about side effects such as blood clots.
Additionally, some people are hesitant to get vaccinated due to concerns about side effects such as blood clots. These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Immunity. Those issues, herd immunity. This issue pose challenges.
Like all demographic shifts, aging populations do pose challenges that need to be addressed. But an aging
The current yield environment does pose challenges for how we manage capital and product mix.
The web components do pose challenges for one very popular flavor of service
rendering.
All pose challenges, but Damien is persistent. His ability to perform his most complex actions with all the distractions of the
Time which would pose challenges for banks with low capital or high amounts of non-performing loans, and for highly indebted sovereigns. And political events raise some uncertainty. Going forward, it'll be important.
Time and time again to pose challenges. And so for these reasons, I'm not sure that his story fits the usual kind of just happy ending story that seems to really hold on to broader audiences' imaginations.
Yeah, it's not the kind of
Imaginations.
classic. The rate increase could also pose challenges for those shopping for a home.
For people who are new home buyers,
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Immunity. 이렇게 말하면 어렵네요.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Herd
These issues
immunity.
pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Immunity. Herd immunity. Achieving herd immunity. Herd immunity. These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Other vaccines. These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Herd immunity. Herd immunity. Herd immunity. Achieving herd immunity. This issue pose challenging in achieving herd immunity. Achieving herd immunity.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Immunity.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity.
Herd immunity. These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity. This issue pose challenging in achieving herd immunity. Immunity.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity. Other
Herd immunity.
Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity.
Single dose to confirm immunity. Will soon become available. Other vaccines will soon become available. Other vaccine, like the one from Johnson & Johnson. Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confirm immunity.
Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available.
Confirm immunity. A single dose to confirm immunity will soon become available.
Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available.
Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available. Nevertheless,
Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require one dose to confirm immunity. Require a single dose to confirm the immunity will soon become available. Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require one dose to confirm immunity, will soon become available. Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require one dose, require a single dose to confirm immunity, will soon become available.
Nevertheless, it will still other vaccines, like the one from Johnson and Johnson, which only require a single dose to confirm immunity, will soon become available. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines.
It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Nevertheless, 그러면 불구하고 nevertheless,
it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone.
Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. It will still take months. It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Nevertheless,
Meanwhile, there is growing
nevertheless,
it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone.
Nevertheless, it will take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Enough vaccines for everyone. Nevertheless, it will still take months. It will still take months before. It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. There are enough vaccines for everyone. It will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone.
Meanwhile, there is growing. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Meanwhile, there is growing concern
about new variants of the coronavirus. Meanwhile, contagious.
Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious.
Known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious.
Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious.
Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of the coronavirus. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about the new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about the new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. Meanwhile, there is growing concerns about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious.
Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains.
Against these new strains, variants, the new strains, new variants of the concerns.
The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains.
May not be as effective against these new strains. New variants of the coronavirus, new strains, variants of the new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. New current vaccine may not be effective against these new strains. Current vaccine may not be as effective against these new strains. The biggest fear is that the biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be effective against the new variants, against these new strains. The biggest fear
is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future.
Strains.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccines in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to there may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive a regular vaccination. Receive regular vaccination in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive a regular vaccination in the future. There may be need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive the vaccination. Receive regular vaccinations. Receive regular vaccination in the future. And people may need to receive regular vaccination in the future. There may be need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccination in the future.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. Korea's first confirmed case of there may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. There may be a need to develop new vaccines.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines. There may be a need to develop new vaccines.
Develop new vaccines.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines.
There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2000. Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020. The virus spread.
Korea's first confirmed cases of COVID-19 was reported in 2020.
The virus spread rapidly. Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020.
Was reported in January 2020.
Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases, behind.
And at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases. At one point Korea had.
The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China.
At one point Korea. And at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases. At one point. And at one point.
And at one point, he mentioned his Filipino background. I sank into my chair because
technology entrepreneur who gave an amazing presentation. But at one point during the presentation, a question came up that was right in my field of non-technical expertise. And so I answered it. And after that, a long discussion came around. And it wound up in me being asked back to present on entrepreneurial techniques in the government sector the following year.
And at one point, an earthquake rocked the South Tower nearly 5 meters in each direction. Strauss took worker safety very seriously, requiring hard hats at
ever done so far. At one point they called me into the writers' room on Zoom and were like, we have something to pitch you.
And at one point, she just casually mentions a weird period of fever relocation in the 40s where crisis. At one point, inflation was so out of control that the country switched its new currency.
And at one point, I believe Putin says, "Do you support this?" And he says, "I will."
At one point in my career, I drew pigs and compared them with politicians and National Guards who were
results. At one point in 2020, losing over $100 million a day, it would have been far easier for Bastian to wait for more information before taking action. But effective leaders during upheaval don't hide in the shadows. In fact, as Bastian put,
referring to their rights, but these are English rights. At one point in the Continental Congress, in 1774, 75, they begin to realize that if they keep appealing to English rights, that it's a little awkward if they're going to move towards independence. So they just simply rhetorically change the English rights to natural rights.
The Declaration of Independence is hugely important because it memorializes the idea that government rests on the consent of the governed. And once Americans no longer felt they could consent to British government,
at one point,
the virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of.
And at one point Korea had the second.
The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China.
And at one point Korea had the second.
The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China.
The virus spread rapidly in the early stages. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases. Behind China. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China.
The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases behind China. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures.
Strict quarantine. In Lisbon. At one point, in Lisbon,
contributions. Aren't they likely to say, though, in response, well, we do this because the law permits it?
Whether it was in response to Haiti or in response to the tsunami in Southeast Asia.
And what he did in response is he went on Regis and Kelly. And broke his old record.
Months in response response to the collection here at the National Gallery, and made beautiful and vulnerable work in response.
In response to the Wallace Art Awards collection at the Academy Galleries in Wellington.
By an event or an emotion or a situation, we have a behavior that we do in response to this, and this gets rid of.
In response.
They left or seceded in response to the growing movement for the nation.
If social distancing is needed in response to an outbreak, or worse off, when public health measures are implemented in response to an outbreak. And of course,
Introducing Rebird in response to the problem of waste, an emerging collection of Introducing Rebird in response to the problem of Introducing Rebird in response to the problem of waste, an emerging
Many others in response to the country's massive housing crisis in 1960.
In response. In response. In response.
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures.
Implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures.
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and
implemented strict.
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures.
In response, the government declared nation health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Strict quarantine and social distancing measure. Social social distancing measures. In response, the government declared a nation health emergency and implemented
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing.
And implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Implemented strict quarantine implemented emergency strict declared. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. In response, the government declared national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Social distancing measures. In response, the government declared national health emergency. In response, the government declared a nation health emergency and implemented strict quarantine strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Implemented strict quarantine, implemented social distancing measures. Implemented social distancing measures.
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Testing stations. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine.
Implemented strict quarantine. Implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures.
In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus.
Whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus. Testing stations
were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus.
Immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus. Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive. When someone tested positive for the coronavirus. We launched it whenever someone tested positive. When someone tested positive for the coronavirus. The coronavirus. Testing stations were set up. All across the nation. And contact tracing efforts were immediately
Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus.
Immediately launched whenever someone tested positive.
Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus.
Tested positive for the coronavirus.
Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus. Thanks to these active measures, Korea managed to avoid a major outbreak during the pandemic, with a total number of cases a little over 30 million as of today. This is
with the total number of cases a little over 3 million as of today. A little over 3 million as of today. With a total number of cases, a little over 3 million as of today. This is
This is relatively low compared to case numbers in other countries. However, the pandemic is not over in Korea, and there are still large clusters of community infections all over the nation. However, the pandemic is not over in Korea, and there are still large clusters of
community infections.
However, the pandemic is not over in Korea, and there are still large clusters of community infections all over the nation. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increased social distancing measures and forcing some businesses to
forcing some businesses to shut down or close early. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increase the social distancing measures. Leading to hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increase the social distancing measures and leading to increase the social distancing measure and forcing some businesses to shut down or close early. Some businesses to shut down or close early. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increased social distancing measures, leading to increase the social distancing measures and forcing some business to shut down or close early. Social gathering.
These issues pose challenges in achieving herd immunity. Other vaccines, like the one from Johnson & Johnson, which only require a single dose to confer immunity, will soon become available. Nevertheless, it will still take months before there are enough vaccines for everyone. Meanwhile, there is growing concern about new variants of the coronavirus, which are known to be more contagious. The biggest fear is that the current vaccines may not be as effective against these new strains. There may be a need to develop new vaccines, and people may need to receive regular vaccinations in the future. Korea's first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported in January 2020. The virus spread rapidly in the early stages, and at one point Korea had the second highest number of cases, behind China. In response, the government declared a national health emergency and implemented strict quarantine and social distancing measures. Testing stations were set up all across the nation, and contact tracing efforts were immediately launched whenever someone tested positive for the coronavirus. Thanks to these active measures, Korea managed to avoid a major outbreak during the pandemic, with a total number of cases a little over 30 million as of today. This is relatively low compared to case numbers in other countries. However, the pandemic is not over in Korea, and there are still large clusters of community infections all over the nation. Hundreds of new confirmed cases are reported each day, leading to increased social distancing measures and forcing some businesses to shut down or close early. Social gatherings of 5 or more people have been banned, and mask wearing is mandatory in all public places, including transportation. These measures have been effective in preventing the spread of the virus. However, there has been high level of quarantine fatigue among people, especially among small business owners. Meanwhile, vaccinations have begun in Korea, but the pace has not been fast enough due to the shortage of vaccines. It has been almost 3 years since the coronavirus first broke out, and vaccinations for COVID-19 have been going on in countries around the world. However, some countries and vaccination for COVID-19 have been going on. Have been going on in countries around the world. Have been going on. Vaccination for COVID-19 have been going on in countries around the world. However, some countries are still seeing a huge number of new patients due to the Delta variant of the coronavirus, which is more transmissible. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on our daily lives. Firstly, we have had to minimize person-to-person contact and avoid crowded places such as bars or clubs. Many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. And as such, many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. Shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to, and as such, in response. And as such,
we welcome students here as adults, and as such, we respect their right to privacy. Confidentiality belongs to them. What does that mean? It means we can't share their...
And as such is so bloody far-fetched and ridiculous that,
And as such, we now look a bit of a fool. Our allies are hating us, our economies are slumping, racist incidents are flaring up. Yes, I'm afraid on the world stage today.
And as such, die out.
Right now, we are in the midst of the Earth's sixth mass extinction.
And as such, had overall responsibility for the UN reaching what would... And as such, had overall responsibility for the UN...
Life-changing experience, and as such, I have loaded up on fiber and water. But...
And as such, so many sales leaders are left in a situation where they're getting 30-50% adoption, and the
Fraction cases. And as such, they don't involve the kinds of things that you do.
And as such, they will be able to help themselves and make a contribution if we let them. If you're interested in what I've told you about, we've published 2 very accessible reports on refugee economies and refugee innovation. Thank you very much.
All of us, and we are all inheritors of this history, and as such, need to redress this.
And as such, Obamacare has helped ensure 12 million people in the nation.
And as such, many companies.
Many businesses were forced to shut down when the number of new cases spiked, and as such, many companies had to make changes in the workplace. Some made their staff work from home, and work meetings took place via video conferences, using programs. Some made their staff work from home, and work meetings took place via video conferences, using programs like Zoom. This has fundamentally changed the work environment. This has fundamentally changed the work environment, and many predict that working from home. This has fundamentally changed the work environment, and many predict that working from home will. This has fundamentally changed the work environment, and many predict that working from home will remain a trend even after the This has fundamentally changed the work environment, and many predict that working from home will remain a trend even after the pandemic.
Even after the pandemic. Even after the trend, the pandemic. In the end, the coronavirus has drastically changed our lives. Drastically. Change our life. Drastically.
At the National Gallery, because it has been cut down so drastically.
There have been key elements that have changed drastically.
Systems made of drastically different combinations of elements out there.
Like trains and coaches to drastically cut our emissions. But the truth is, back into liquid water, drastically reducing the pressure. But of course, the world and threatens to even more drastically in the coming decades.
We reduce our food production, or will change what we produce.
This new idea for a reusable spacecraft was meant to drastically reduce the cost. A habitat in space will need to be drastically reduced.
Rube Goldberg-like machines called linotypes drastically.
Says here, scientists have changed our way of life more drastically than television stars.
We haven't gotten drastically more inventive.
We could potentially drastically reduce the size of rabies outbreaks.
Drastically changed our lives.